Welcome to the Cameo Show. Today we have with us a very special guest. It is a special edition Father's Day podcast episode. We have with us my dad, the man, the myth, the legend, Mortdog.
What up? What up?
I'm going to have my hands full this episode. I have my two favorite men on the planet. And we've invited my dad to be on the podcast because not only is he super cool, but he has a lot to offer in the way of mindset. This man doesn't talk about it very often, but he has run 18 marathons. That's 26.2 miles. And at an elite pace, Boston Marathon twice. He's trained and trained and trained my entire life. That's what I envision of him every time I think of him. Running, 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 like to run, running man. Welcome to the show, Dad.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is my first time to do an interview. Can you believe it?
I can't
As awesome
actually.
as I am, it's my first time to do an interview.
I mean, the world is just, they're not going to know what hit them. And
Oh
you're
my
probably
God.
going to be fielding phone calls like
Oh,
crazy after this
oh
interview is
gosh.
released.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited. You guys just ask away. I'll try to answer all your questions.
Hi, Greg. You're going to
Good
have to help
morning.
me keep him under control here on this interview, I think. So I'm going to,
That's not the real G5000, is it?
It
it
is.
is.
G5000 in the house. Woo!
It is. Always keeping people wanting more up in the corner.
There we go. Yeah, exactly.
So I introduced you as a runner, but you're so much more than that, Dad. You are the best mailman on the planet. You are the former retired DJ on wheels. You
Yes.
you are DIY with Mortdog.
Well, that's kind of crazy, but yes.
I mean, we have so many things to cover here. So we're going to dig right in. All of it starts with mindset. And I remember, Dad, being a little girl, always feeling encouraged because you weren't afraid to try things yourself and you modeled it for me. And then when I would feel discouraged, you always made me feel like you can do it. Just work hard. You can do anything. And we talk a lot about leading by example and wanting to be that for our own kids and for our own communities and for people around us. And it started, you're like the OG of that. I had the best example of that in you as my dad because I never felt like anything was impossible. So I kind of want to start there because I'm wondering what goes on in that mind that you felt that way and that you were always able to like instill that in me and in your own way give it to the people around you because it's an enthusiasm unlike any other. So what do you think that is for you? Like where does it come from? Is it a constant narrative?
Well, I don't really know because see, growing up as a kid, I had four brothers and sisters. There's five of us. Mom and dad worked all the time. And I just have always entertained myself or always tried to do the best at everything I've done. I mean, I always want to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I can't always be that way. But growing up, we weren't like kids are today, where you've got a brother and sister, and okay, this one's playing ball, and you go see this one do whatever. The other ones weren't into sports. I just chose to jump into sports. And I played ball as a little kid and always liked to play ball and wanted to be the best. And the only way I thought that I was going to get good was you have to work at it. A professional golfer doesn't get to be a professional golfer because he goes out and swings a club on
Right.
Saturday mornings and drinks beer and drives around in a golf cart. You have to work at it. So, growing up, I played ball when I went to school. I played junior high football. Wasn't any good at that. It was terrible. I mean, I went to practice every day, done the whole thing. I played one down the whole season, one down, and it was a pass and I dropped it. So that wasn't, that wasn't too good. But I never stopped. I never quit any sport. I kept playing. And then I wrestled in high school. I was a freshman. And it was so funny because I was just a little tiny kid that weighed 80 pounds. And the very first time I had to wrestle, I didn't even understand sport. I had to wrestle varsity as a freshman because the kid that wrestled varsity 98 pounds, he couldn't make weight. Here I am. I'm an 80-pound kid that's wrestled 98. I'm sitting a bunch eating, and everybody else is going outside. They're having to run and do laps and trying to cut weight for the day. But I hated that sport also. I was pinned every single time. except for one. And the kid felt sorry for me, I think, and let me up. So then everybody was always asking me, how many lights are on the ceilings in this gym? Because you're always on your back. You should know. So, but the point is you cannot quit what you start. You have to finish. Even though I wasn't good at that sport, I always tried. And that's anything. I don't like to give up. Even if I'm working on a project at this house, I'm not going to let that project beat me up. I'm going to get it done. And then I always think, well, if I can't do it, there's professionals out there that will come and do it for me. I'm going to try first. I've always said I can't, never could do anything. So I'm going to try it first. And if I can't do it, then there's somebody that's going to be able to come fix it for me. My mind just works crazy.
So many things on that. One, I bet when you dropped the one pass and the one play that you got to play in junior high school, I would bet that you made sure everyone knew that you were the best pass dropper on the team. I say that to be funny because that's your perspective, is that you always take something, even if it isn't that great, and you find a way to make it special. You find a way to make it positive. You find a way to make it fun, not take yourself too seriously. You find a way to learn from it. And that's what I mean about, whether you know it or not, this contagious energy that you have around people. It's the way that you present it that makes an impact. Whether you're being serious or not all the time isn't really relevant. It's just the way that you present it to people that gives this infinite possibility energy. The second thing that I wanted to bring up is that when you tried all of these things, I'm wondering, like you said, I don't want to quit. I won't give up. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to see it through. Who was your example? Where did you see that?
I didn't really have an example. I don't know how I got to that point. I didn't have a big brother that played sports or anything or said, hey, you got to do this or try this. It's just something I've always done. And I'm very competitive also. So I started working at a very early age. My very first job when I was a little kid, I delivered a TV guide route back on Orchard Island. So I would walk from door to door. I had certain people that got the TV guide every single week. It was just like a newspaper route. Funny, I'm now in deliver the mail. And I would go through the snow and do everything. But I always tried to be the best at everything I can do. I like to make people have fun or want to have fun. That's why when I was a kid, instead of going to college to be a phys ed teacher, I wanted to join the circus. I wanted to be a clown at Ringling Brothers Circus. And I kept thinking, I want to be that one clown. They got a little tiny Mini Cooper. There's 45 people coming out. And all of a sudden the crowd goes wild and they go crazy. But wait, there's one more. I'm coming out. And the crowd goes even crazier because I'll come out. So I just always tried to be the best and want people to have fun.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just the way I'm wired. I don't know.
And so maybe just the constant reiteration of that. I mean, when you get positive reinforcement from the people you're delivering to, they know you're reliable. They know you're going to be there. They come out and say hi, you're personable. However that was developing for you from a young age, it instilled in you this, okay, when I do the right thing, when I keep showing up, good things happen. I feel good. People around me feel good.
Right. I think it was like that when I also, as a young age, I waited tables in a restaurant. I would have the same people come in and they'd say, hey, we want Tim to wait on us.
Yeah.
And I could see them coming across the street. We'll say the Smith family. Here they're coming from church. And, I know they're going to sit at the back table. I know this guy wants milk. His milk's sitting on the table when he gets there. These people are drinking coffee. I know exactly. So when they bring them in and set them down, they've already got all their stuff. I know exactly what they're going to eat probably.
Yeah.
And it's taking care of people. I always believe in taking care of people, making sure that they're having a good time.
Just a note on that too. I don't feel like when you say that it's people pleasing in the traditional form of sacrificing who you are to make sure everybody's happy, because you're having a hell of a good time too doing it. You enjoy making sure that you're taking care of people. You enjoy knowing what people are going to want or expect and fulfilling that. And it doesn't take away from who you are, and it doesn't sacrifice or cut corners for you or your emotions. It's just an extension really of who you are in making people happy. It's a reciprocated thing. So just important to note, because I think that like people pleasing is also something that could be misconstrued as a negative thing. Well, you're always worried about everybody else. You never take care of yourself. But as your daughter, I feel like you always did a really great job balancing that. Nobody's perfect. Of course, we all have our things. But I didn't see any of that when I was little. I didn't feel like, well, my dad's always doing everything for everybody else and he's never taken time for himself, which kind of circles right back to running. When you were in high school, you kind of found your footing in running. Football didn't work. Wrestling wasn't your thing.
Like in the sport of running, I tried track and I didn't like running in that circle all the time. I just could not grasp that. I mean, it was just like, I'm going in the same spot and I'm getting no place. I just didn't like it. So then I started running cross country. Cross country was different. You could be the best player sitting on the bench and the coach doesn't know.
Yeah.
Cross country is different. Cross country, you're running all by yourself. It's an individual sport. It's also a team sport because you want to place high, but it's an individual sport. So you have nobody to blame but yourself if you're having a bad day. Well, my legs are tired, or I just didn't feel like, I just liked being out there by myself. I just like running. I had a great coach in high school. We had a close knit of guys that just ran together. I just stuck with that sport. And I ran cross country as a sophomore, junior, and senior. And we went to state and everything, and it was pretty cool. Running was the thing that I enjoyed the most. It was just an outlet. You just go run, and that's it.
I've heard, you tell your story before. Wasn't an important element to that too was that you had an excellent cross country coach that made you feel seen and that believed in you, maybe like no one else had, and gave you that belief that you could do this and be excellent at it. Or am I making that up?
Jeff Kearns was a very good coach. He was a young coach, and he was into that running too. It was back in the 80s, early 70s. When Bill Rogers was winning Boston Marathon. And then you got Frank Shorter. And it was just running was a big boom and crazy back then. Everybody wanted to be like those guys. And he was a great coach. He made, our practices exciting. We did different things. It wasn't like you have now where you got the fancy watches that keep track of your miles and keep track of everything. We didn't have watches. We just went out and said, okay, this group's going to go out at a 7-minute pace. What's your prediction? Okay, I think I can run a 7:01. And we would have these practices where they would keep track of what we said our time would be. And then the closest one at the end would get like maybe a 12-pack of Gatorade. And we thought that was like, oh, okay. And a guy would get a 12-pack of Gatorade and we'd share it with just the varsity and not the reserve. You guys are way below us. So, we did have a good coach that said, you guys can do this. And I was happy to be in that sport.
It sounds like you not only found what you enjoyed doing, because that makes sense to me when you say that. Like, I'm not relying on anybody else. I go out, I run, it's all on me. My performance is on me. And you enjoy that. There are a lot of us that do. I mimic that in you. I enjoy being able to do things on my own and be responsible for myself. But then you also found a group of guys who were all interested and respectful and on the same page about what you were trying to accomplish individually, but also as a team, and into the hype of the running craze. And I was fortunate enough to have Jeff Kearns as a teacher when I was in high school too. And he was just a different type of person. He just didn't take anything too seriously, but everything was serious. And you felt like you could do anything because he could always show you a way or give you a different perspective. And I remember that from him as a teacher. So I can only imagine what he was like, 20 years before then as a coach.
I remember one time at practice, I used, and I've always got a hat on. 99.8% of the time I have a ball hat on. And we would sometimes wear them backwards in practice. And he said, hey, you guys turn your hats around. You're not going to act like a bunch of goofballs, And ever since then, I've never worn my hat backwards. I've always I would wear it like this sometimes while we was running. We would, goof off and stuff. And he said, you guys, and I never wear my hat backwards. It's always.
And that's from Jeff Kearns. Isn't that funny how something like that stuck with you? The impact that one man had on your life. We were recording an episode the other day where I was talking about Julie Greider in the same way, the impact that she had on me as my volleyball coach, and how all these years later, 25 years later, and much longer in your case, like that voice is still in my head. And Greg has a coach that he refers to, his football coach in high school, that made him feel seen.
And about the same time frame, about, sophomore to junior, there's a big transitioning there. And similar story for me. I was second string all through the summer camps going into my junior year. And if it was my old coach, I would have never had a chance to start. He would have just always played the senior. No offense against him, but that was just his mentality. It didn't really matter so much on the
Skill side.
heart and the skills and all the other stuff. But this new coach came in, and all through the summer camps, I was second on the depth chart just because I couldn't squat as much as the next guy, or I couldn't bench as much as the next guy. So it was motivating all through camp. I worked really hard, and on the first day of hitting, when you put the pads on, that's when I got to just step up and basically take the position without having someone believe in me and give me a shot. It would have been easy to feel disheartened or feel like, well, what's the point of trying? But when you have an excellent leader, an excellent mentor, an excellent coach that's drawing out the excellence in you, he might have said one thing in camp early on, like, hey, that was really fast. Maybe he gave me some little nugget of like belief in myself that no one had ever done before. And that belief seed, if it's watered and you believe in yourself, and then over time, then you can step up and be excellent. And like you say about your hat, this coach also instilled in us to be 10 minutes early everywhere you go. He's like, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. And that was an old Lombardi,
right?
It stuck with me, and I think about that all the time.
So, Dad, you finally, as a sophomore in high school, junior, senior, found your thing in running, and you excelled at it, and you had an excellent coach and an excellent team, and people around you that were nurturing that little seed of belief. At what point did you ever think at that moment, like, I'm going to go on and run marathons and I'm going to run them at an elite pace? Like, did that start in high school? Did you have that idea?
We would go to 10Ks and 5Ks, and really there wasn't that many 5Ks. It was mostly 10Ks. I would go to those, and I was mediocre, and I still don't think that I'm the fastest guy in the world. And matter of fact, I haven't ran since COVID. But I wasn't never the fastest guy in the world. You just go to a race, you just run, and they give the awards away, and you just go. I decided to run my first marathon. I mean, it was in Farmersville, Ohio. It was out in no man's land. It was cold and it was terrible. And I trained for this thing and just decided to go run. I said, oh God, I'm never doing that again. Why would I even want to do that again? After 15 minutes, you're done across the finish line and you got your mind back and you got your legs back. Then it's like, I wonder if I could ever run Boston. Then you got to qualify for Boston. So then you have to run another marathon to qualify for Boston. And at the time I ran, I was only in my 20s. So I had to qualify with a 3-hour marathon. I just got comfortable with running and being out there by myself and just running and running and running. So then when I qualified for Boston, I had never been on an airplane. Was going to go, okay, I got to fly, got to stay in a hotel. So how can I make this work easier for me? So I went into the company that I worked for, which was Airstream, which is the manufacturer of the RV industry, the travel trailers, and they're the Cadillac. So I went in and said, hey, do you guys want to help me go to Boston? I'm going to run the Boston Marathon. And it was like, well, we're not sure about that. You sponsor ball teams, football teams. I know I'm just one guy. And, here they met with somebody, the personnel or something. And they said, yeah, we'll pay for you to go. So they paid for my flight, hotel, another company in town, which was Holloway Sportswear, which was a jacket company. I had got my clothes were all printed with Airstream. They made me a running suit that was the color,
Wow.
gray and blue, which was Airstream's colors. So then I go to that marathon. It was one of the craziest things because I'd never even been on an airplane. So now I'm on an airplane going to Boston. It's like, oh my God. It was just,
how did you get on the plane? How did you fit on the plane with that head?
No, it was tough, but I got on. I didn't, to be honest with you, back then I didn't have as big a head as I do now. I mean, my head's pretty large, right?
It's been an evolution of the size of your head.
I mean, when you go from all the things I've been in, it just grows and grows and grows. But it was fun. I went to Boston, and the goal to do Boston was always to try to do it in 3 hours. The first time I go to Boston, it was crazy. And I ran like a 3:0, I think a 3:07 or something. I can't remember anyway. So then I go back the next year, and Airstream paid, the same company paid, because I was still working there. They paid for me to go again, and I wound up running 3 hours and 48 seconds. So I could just see coming down that street in Boston, you coming down that street and you want to break that. But it was mind boggling to me at the amount of people versus a little 5K or 10K in your neighborhood or in another town. This was thousands and thousands of people. So it was just crazy to me. And they just wanted me to run more.
So let's back up a second. So you just decided I can do this distance. You went and ran a marathon. And then you're like, I can do better than that. I wonder if I can run Boston. And you just started doing your own research. There wasn't the internet back then. So
No.
You had to figure out how did you find out what you needed to qualify for Boston? How did you even know about Boston? Like,
I think it was probably through Runner's World magazine.
There you go.
They might have had an article in there or something. And then you had to qualify. You had to qualify at another marathon. It wasn't like you can just go. So you had to qualify.
So you ran the first one. Then you had to run another one to qualify.
I had to run another one. And I ran a 2:59 somewhere. I just barely qualified. In the 2:59, like a 2:59:45. I was like, I just got to get under the
Your second marathon ever.
Yeah.
Was it downhill the whole way?
Did you have on roller skates? What's the deal?
No, I did have on roller skates, but it was, I put in the work. It wasn't like I had people around me to train with. This was back in the 80s. I lived out in a little small town in Ohio. Nobody, I ran the same path all the time. People would know who I was. And you just keep getting faster and faster. I just listened to the podcast of Ken Rideout, who's a masters runner, who's like the fastest guy killing everything. He just takes off and runs. I'm just going to go run 10 miles today. So that's kind of what I was clear back in the 80s. I was just a young guy. I would just go put on a pair of running shoes, and we didn't have the fancy running shoes like they do now that you can pump up or you can do whatever you want to them. And, Hoka's and Brooks and everything that cost, a couple $100 for a pair of shoes that you're going to wear. They were cheap, cruddy running shoes. But I just went out every day and done it. I like the work, put in the work to get the result.
Yeah, so much consistency there. And that's what I remember being a little girl, is that you would do whatever you had to make sure that you got your run in. And I don't mean like sacrifice things. I mean like waking up at 4 a.m. to run before you went to work all day, or run to work, like you mentioned, or run on your lunch break. I mean, you were just 100% completely dedicated to it. I didn't really recognize that until I was older, and now especially as an adult myself. But I remember seeing it. I remember that, like I said, that's what I think of when I think of you. I picture several pairs of shoes laying all around the house. The ones I didn't understand, why does Dad need another pair of shoes? Because you had 400 miles on that pair and you needed a new one. And those are the things that I remember from being a little girl. But I want to back up a second, because I was really little, and beyond running, you and my mom had me when you were 20. You guys were just young kids figuring it out. So doing whatever it takes is kind of ingrained in who you are. It's the fabric of who you are and who you always have been. And that's not limited to running. Running is just the example that you can see results from. But all of the things that you did in your early 20s, when you had a new baby and you had to support a family at 20, that's character. And so that, when you were just trying to figure it out, now we have a 17-year-old. I can't imagine her being 20 and doing the things that I know you and my mom did when you were 20, having me. That's not limited to anything that you do in your life. And so kind of back to what you were saying, like, I like to win. I like to show up. I like to put the work in. That's just who you've always been. And so when you started running and you started making that happen, you run a marathon, you run a second marathon, you qualify for Boston. Go back to that Airstream thing. Where did the idea and the confidence come from to walk into your employer? Airstream's not like a small company, and be like, hey, this is only my third marathon, but I'm going to run Boston, and will you sponsor me? And to have them say no, and then push a little harder. Like, I think that's amazing.
I don't know. I think it's probably because people knew that I would run. And then when you got a guy that's coming to work, instead, most people are driving a car to work, and this guy's getting up and he's running 7 miles, 8 miles to work. And probably maybe they thought, you know what, this guy deserves a chance. We'll have him wear our shirt. We're a well-known company. He's going to go through the crowd and they're going to yell, Airstream, go Airstream, or,
Yep.
And to them, maybe they thought it was an advertising opportunity. I don't know. Or maybe
Yep.
they just, I have no idea, because I was so young and I didn't really care. I just wanted to have somebody pay for my trip so I didn't have to pay for it.
I guess I never really realized that. I see the picture in my head of you running Boston with a blue Airstream jersey, singlet, tank top on. And I never really knew that you went in and asked them to sponsor you and that they paid for all of that. I had no idea. So that's amazing.
I guess I'm a salesman.
Well,
I love it. I love it because
or a big bullshitter is what I am.
No. What it is you had a real strong why. You had a real strong reason. You had a real strong purpose, and you were all in to that purpose, and you were just giving it your heart and soul. And when someone sees someone else giving it their heart and soul, you cannot help but feel engaged by that and want to be along for that ride. And yes, it was a great marketing opportunity for them. And the other thing, it built a lot of camaraderie around the shop too. Like everybody that worked there was probably like, you know,
oh yeah, they did. They were like, oh
yeah,
this guy's gonna, this guy's gonna kill it.
We have not addressed the fact that you were running a sub 3-hour marathon.
Right. And I was in my 20s. So when you're in your 20s, you don't really, you don't hurt or anything like you do today.
You don't have the aches and pains.
But this age.
But that's elite. That's stand on the start line to this day, elite running. I mean, I know we have the Olympic athletes who are running closer to the 2-hour mark these days, but under 3 hours is like a monster, a beast. And so you're in your 20s, you're going to work every day to support your family, me included. You have a young child, you're running, you're an elite runner, you're doing all of these things. And then life takes over, and then your daughter starts having extra demands of time, and you stopped running for a while. I remember when I was a little bit older. And then you went through some personal stuff. You and my mom got divorced, and then you started running again. You went back to like your kind of your purpose. You went back to your passion. You went back to that one thing you could always rely on, that was you putting in the work during that time. And I think that's pretty amazing as well, because there are a lot of different options when something doesn't go right in life, and a lot of different turns you can take, and a lot of different choices you can make. And you kind of did make some not so great choices, and then you found yourself right back into running.
First of all, when you get divorced, that's a whole different aspect of your life. I mean, things change. You're not used to anything. And like most divorced guys, I'm going to tell you, we're going to all go out and do the same thing. We're hitting the bars, we're hanging out, we're drinking, we're partying, And I got picked up for DUI. I was within, and I had already been running and stuff. I mean, I was running but I had been out this one night, was partying. It got picked up 5 miles from home. Instead of making a right to go home, I made a left and was going to go down the street for breakfast. And next thing you know, I got a cop behind me. And he says, "You've been drinking?" And I says, "I had a couple beers." And the funny story is, he didn't think I was too funny, but I thought I was already, I was in pretty good shape. I'd been running a lot. And this cop says, "Can you do this? Stand on one foot." And they do the sobriety thing. And I says, "I'll tell you what, why don't we just both run 2 miles down the street? I'll give you a mile head start and I'll beat you coming back." And he said, "How about I just put you in the front seat of my car and take you to jail?"
Dad.
So next thing you know, they're hauling me to jail.
Yeah, I mean, that is funny. The circumstances are not funny.
So then it wasn't funny. But then what happened was, I don't know how it is. Yeah, in Ohio, but probably anywhere now, you're mandatory to stay 3 days in jail. So then they take me. Of course, I have to figure out when I got to go to jail. I'm going to the court, and the lady says, "You got to come to jail." Okay, well, I can't come this day because I have a DJ job, but I can't come this day because I got to go to a race. And the judge happened to be right behind me, and he says, "Are you having trouble figuring out when you're coming to jail?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, if you don't figure it out pretty fast, I'm just going to say you're coming right now." So I had to go to jail. And while I was sitting there in jail, I thought, this isn't working, man. I cannot go out and party every weekend. And the next thing you know, I'm going to wind up in trouble. I'm going to be in a car wreck. So that was a wake up call to go to jail, because that's not someplace I want to go hang out. So
Yeah.
I come out of jail and decided I needed to do something better. That right there was a wake up call because it gave me purpose to do something. Then when you lose your license, for 6 months or 8 months and you cannot drive, well, guess what I did? I ran everywhere.
Yeah.
Some people said, "Do you even own a car?" Well,
Yeah.
I do, but I can't drive it right now. So I basically was running all the time, everywhere.
No
I didn't have
excuses.
anything. I didn't have anything to do. I didn't want to go hang out down at the local bar, and so I ran. Sometimes I was running twice a day just to stay out of trouble, stay focused on what I was doing, and that's what got me faster and better.
Well, at this point, you're like 36, 35, 36, because I had just gotten my
36.
driver's license or my permit or something like that. And every once in a while I could drive you somewhere because I remember that time of my life where everything was about me as a teenager and how dare you ask me to drive you somewhere to like a DJ gig, which we didn't really talk about. My dad also has an entrepreneurial spirit. He had his own DJ company and you're a very well-known DJ in our area for a very long period of time. And that was all you too. That goes back to that character and drive. But during that time, you would run everywhere. You would run to my softball games. You didn't ever miss a game, even if you had to run there, which was most often. You didn't want to ask anybody to bring you. You had work privileges. You didn't want to just go from work to the school and sit and waste time. Like you made it happen and running was your thing. And you took a situation that was a negative, that was an unexpected bump in the road, kind of had your time figuring out how to deal with it. But then, like you said, found focus and purpose in running. How many marathons did you run at that point? Like you did a couple, you did Boston twice.
Maybe,
and then
maybe 8.
So you take a break, life's happening. I'm growing up, very busy kid, and your situation happens, you find focus. And then at 36 years old, you decide, okay, I'm going to focus on running a marathon. I got to do something different. This is for me. And then you've gone on since. So you said in your 20s, things don't hurt so bad. But since then, you've ran your best time, which was
I was 37 when I ran my best time. And of course, all I did was run. I mean, I didn't do hardly anything. And I went over to Indiana somewhere over by Indianapolis. I don't know. It took me longer to drive my car over there than it did for me to run the marathon. And I ran my fastest marathon. I ran like a 2:49 and some change. And then I got back in the car and left. So I didn't have anybody there to, you don't have any support or nothing. It was just, I went over, ran a race, got back in my car and left. And I ran my fastest marathon. And it was, it was raining, it was cold. So then, and I just kept running. It just seems like, okay, why did I do that? I'm not going to do that again, but can I run faster?
Yeah.
Can I do another one? Can I do it faster?
You tied it also to an event, the team and training event. I remember watching you do that. So beyond running your fastest time at 37, which all those years later is incredible, elite, you regained that status, then you continued on, and then you also tied it to bigger things.
Right. And the way I did the leukemia thing is I had ran my fastest marathon. I'm thinking, okay, I'm fast. Well, I've qualified for Boston. Why don't I just go back to Boston? Then I got to thinking, I've already been to Boston 2 times. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I want to go back there. I need to run for a reason. Somebody said you could run for the Leukemia Society. It wasn't the idea of running a marathon. I could do 26 miles. That was not a challenge. It was raising $3,000 or more to do it, because I had set up to say, okay, I can do this. I can raise this $3,000. And I was running for a kid that had leukemia. So it was a guy I worked with, said, my nephew's got leukemia. I thought, great, I'll run. This will be my sponsor kid. So I'll raise the money. And I somehow knew somebody that worked at Sprint Telephone. And I walked in and talked to this guy and said, hey, you want to sponsor me to run for leukemia? And they did an article for me in the paper. And the only thing I had to do was wear a ball hat that said Sprint on it. And they gave me $1,000. They did an article on me in the paper, and people sent money that way. And they did, I did a school dance at one of your school dances and raised money because you had a boy in your class that had passed away from leukemia. That's how I would raise money. And then I did for the little boy that I ran for. They set up 2 treadmills in the mall.
Yeah.
And I had a bucket, and I would be on this treadmill, and I'm running at a pretty fast pace on a treadmill. And I had a bucket, and people would just walk by and throw money in. And every time I would run a mile, this kid that had leukemia would change the sign and put, he's now on mile 5 or mile 16, mile 18, or whatever I did. and they had a treadmill for him to run side by side for me too, which was fun. And his parents thought it was cool. And, you know, it was like a big deal. When I went to Nashville, that's where I ran the marathon at. And it was their inaugural event, Nashville's Country Music Marathon. And I was standing right on the starting line. And I luckily got there because I was up in my hotel room when they were playing the national anthem. So I bolted downstairs.
You were not. Really?
Yes, I was. I bolted down real fast to the thing. And I actually happened to be the first person that finished from the Leukemia Society.
Wow.
So it was pretty cool. So it gave me a purpose. I ran for somebody that needed the money, and that was kind of a lot of fun. So
yeah, I remember you going and spending time with the family and getting to know the boy. And while I wasn't there, and that's one of my biggest regrets, is not being at any of these events to support you. But I remember seeing you put in the work. I remember you being so dedicated and determined and driven and not making any excuses. And so I carry that with me in what I do and how I talk to myself, and the way that I saw you treat yourself, and the way that I saw you talk to yourself and coach yourself through these things a lot on your own. Right. I've been able to adopt as an adult. And Greg, I know you have had that influence in your life in some way. And like, that's how I feel like we're trying to parent our kids, is through example. And that all starts, it's a trickle down, you know, it's all who you surround yourself with. You were in a running community. Now we have social media. The message being that like, you kind of are who you hang out with. And
exactly
back to that moment where you could have chosen to continue, not that there's anything wrong with it. This isn't a space of judgment, but you could have chosen at that point, I'm in my mid-30s, I'm divorced, I'm going to just have fun and do whatever. You chose something bigger than that and went on now to have run from that point forward 10 more marathons. And I finally did go watch you run a marathon. Our whole family did. Your grandkids were there and got to see you run a marathon, and
which was a blast, which was cool. Yeah. And it seems like every time you guys have been to a race that I've been at, I've never won. I've always choked, or I've pulled a muscle, or you know, because I've run a lot of races and I've won a lot of races, and I have a blanket in here in the house. It's just t-shirts. I call it my winning blanket because half of the shirts on there, I won the races. Yeah. So yeah, that marathon was fun.
What I hear you saying is that it is fun to win. You enjoy winning, but it isn't and has never really been about winning. Winning is a side effect. It's always been about the process. It's always been about what you're doing. It's always been about who you're surrounding yourself with. It's always been about the impact that you can make in doing it, and the consistency and what it does for you and your own mental health and your own physical health. And
exactly,
the winning was just
awesome. Winning's the icing on the cake.
Yeah. We all know you like to win more than most. So I know that is definitely a huge part of it. But if you stripped that away from you, these are things that you would have been doing anyway.
You said it right. You said it a few times in this episode, but like, as soon as you cross that, this is how it is in life. And this is the thing with me too. Like, a lot of us feel this way. Like, you accomplish something, and then you're like, in a half hour, like, I got to do something bigger. It's like, it's just an addiction of like always wanting more, you know, and always pushing. And so that's why you got to love what you're doing, because really it's all about the process. It's not about the finish line or race day. It's just, you loved those miles. You loved all the training and where you were at mentally. You've often said it was your space to meditate and just kind of be in your own head. Right. And I love that, because.
And I'll tell you, there's not a better feeling, and it's awesome. It's when you are the lead runner and they got a car in front of you, or they got a golf cart. And there was one time there was a golf cart in front of me. I said, you guys are going to have to go faster, because if you don't, I'm going around you. You know? Yeah, you guys got to go a little bit quicker. Or when you cross the finish line, and at the awards, they give you money. Especially the one that I went to, they paid the winner $500, and I forget what place that was. But I go back the next year, and I'm the lead runner, and I'm the winner. And when they handed me that $500 in cash, I was like, that was the quickest 17 minutes. That was the best money I earned in 17 minutes. First of all, it was something I like doing, and it was not that tough. but you know, you're right. Always wanting to do something bigger and better. It's just like our backyard. This did not just get here. We did all this work ourselves. So when I did one thing, it was like, I got to make something. It's got to be better.
Yeah.
It's got to be bigger. It's got to be cooler, you know, and I just keep going at being bigger and better.
Speaking of bigger and better, so how did you run so fast with that hair back in the day?
Oh,
You weren't very aerodynamic.
I wasn't. I had headband. Sometimes I'd wear a headband. A lot of times I would wear a hat. I mean, I don't know. It's just because I do have a lot of I do have a lot of hair.
My dad we have some pictures from when I was a little girl of family pictures. My dad's hair is like 3 times the size of his forehead and how vertical it was. So it was a lot of hair. That's great. Finally get an opportunity to
tell your story,
to talk about this huge part of your life that you have been just absolutely amazing at. Like, you haven't ever gotten the recognition you deserve. You mentioned your yard, and I just think that's a perfect segue for like how all of the work and dedication that you put into running didn't stop there. So it started with character and wanting to be the best in what you were doing as a kid in your TV guide delivery. It translated into running all of those years, falling off, jumping back on. It's who you are. And it's still who you are, even though you don't run like you used to, and you haven't run since COVID. And your last marathon was in 2019, the one that we were at, right?
It was my worst in Florida, but I still finished.
Well, you were 4 years ago, you were 56 years old and you ran a 3:23.
And I had trained to run a 2:40, but then when I trained here in the cold in Indiana in the winter, and I trained on a treadmill, when you get down to Florida and at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's already 95 degrees
and 80% humidity.
80% humidity. It's like, and you know, I froze up. I mean, I was running great till the halfway point, or just a little after the halfway point, and then all hell breaks loose and everything tightens up on me, and I can't hardly put one leg in front of the other. But I finished. I mean,
quitting wasn't an option, though. It's kind of back to what you said. I'm not going to throw in the towel.
I wasn't going to quit. It's just like when I ran Disney all them years ago, and I was hurting then too. And it's like mile 24, and I thought, wait a minute, I've come this far. I'm not giving up my Mickey Mouse medal now. You know, by God, I've come this far. I'm going to get the Mickey Mouse medal. It wasn't $100, and it was the Mickey Mouse medal. So
what is it that they say? I didn't come this far to only come this far. And it sounds like that's kind of what you've lived by, whether you knew those words or that saying all this time. It's just kind of what has been going on in your own brain. It's how you're wired, and it's still how you're wired. So where I was going with that is that you may not run like you used to and be able to do marathons or even 5Ks at this point, at this stage in your life, but that translates into other areas of your life. So you have built your backyard into a resort style, and it's amazing. And you've done a lot of that on your own because you have never lost that childlike curiosity and enthusiasm for learning something new, trying something new. If I don't get it right, it's going to be okay. I'll learn something. I'll try again. That has always been who you are, and it's who you still are. And it's evolved into something that, like, we have a lot of fun with DIY with Mortdog. You do so many projects and figure things out yourself. And there are so many people who can benefit from that. And so we've found value in having fun making these little tutorial videos, because there are, I don't know how to do this shit. Greg doesn't know how to do this shit, but Mortdog does. So you can pull up a video and something that might feel really simple to you is something that isn't simple to anybody else. And you can break it down in a way. And so it ties back to, again, you just always want to show up and make people happy and do things that are of benefit and value. And that's always the lead. So I've always seen that as a little girl, and then as an adult. And now I'm able to see it with even more clarity in some of the things that we've done and the businesses that we've started and grown. And that's narrative that sticks with me. So it doesn't ever go away, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is that no matter what you're doing, you put your whole heart and soul into it.
I do. I try to do everything the best. I mean, I do. I put that's just the way it is.
And so you work
everything.
for the post office and you deliver mail and you have a walking route. And
I do.
you don't just show up to work so you can punch your time card and then do whatever you need to do and then leave and not care about it. You put a lot of care into what you do. I've talked to you while you're delivering to people, and you have a relationship with people. Community is important to you. Knowing what people expect and wanting to see them smile is important to you. And so you show up to work every day, and I'm going to be the best. I'm not just going to deliver the mail. I'm going to be the best damn mailman that's ever been. I just think that it's super admirable. And it's something that like maybe you don't see everywhere.
There are people that come to work every day. I mean, and it may not just be delivered mail. We'll say whatever it is. If you hate what you're doing, why are you doing it? Don't come here every day and complain for 35 years. You should have quit 2 weeks after you started the job if you didn't like it.
People are afraid to try something new. Everybody has different circumstances. Some people it's necessity and survival, and everybody needs to make money, but some people maybe don't have the mindset that you've always had, that was instilled in you at some point and through all of your experience that you bring to the table, or that have the ability to say, I don't like this, and I do have permission to maybe look at it differently or try something else or get a different job. You know what I mean?
And I'm one that does not like change. Trust me. I hate change. I hate conflict and I hate change.
Mm-hmm.
But you get through it. And the job that I have, I deliver the mail on the same route every single day, so everybody knows who I am. It's a lot of fun.
And you let everybody know. You make sure everybody knows that you enjoy being the best at delivering the mail. But that's what I mean, like that contagious, infectious energy. Everybody knows that you're kidding, but you're serious, but you're kidding, and it's playful. You know, it's not a situation where you show up and you're miserable every day. You show up every day and you put your best foot forward, and you have a good mindset and positivity about you that's infectious.
I just saw somebody last night at the girls' dance recital that is actually on my mail route. They were there to watch their grandkids, and they were talking to Susan. They said, "Oh my God, we just love him. He makes his job look so easy. He just walks down the street and just talks to everybody, and it just makes it look so easy." So it is what it is. You just do it, and you got to love what you're doing. If you don't love it, I walk a 16-mile mail route every day. I'm walking to 700 houses or 650 houses, whatever I have on my route. So, and you make sure that the people's packages are hidden or they're put in the right place. Or
just like when the families would come in and you knew that the guy wanted his milk and this guy wants his coffee this way. It's just your attention to detail. It's caring about people and loving what you do and loving how it feels to be able to provide that for people. That also happened in running when you tied it to a bigger purpose and you decided, I'm going to raise money, or I'm going to raise awareness, or whatever the case may be. Like, you just have always been willing to put yourself out there in a way that is for the greater good and the positivity overall for everyone involved.
I love the story of when you were delivering your route, and then halfway through on that Saturday morning, you stopped and ran a 5K and won it. And then you went back in your route and finished doing your route. It's like, and you
didn't just
your
stop and run. Outfit. He ran in his mail outfit. That's right.
So this is kind of persistence, or this is going to be the story until I get it right. I'm going to tell you that. So I come to this town and I start carrying mail. I hadn't run forever, and I decided, okay, I'm going to go to the new Y and I'm going to start running. I'm going to do this. How long is it going to take me to get down to where I was in high school? Could I even do that? And it took me exactly 1 year. So I go to the Y and start running on a treadmill and all this. 1 year later, I run their 5K and I wind up winning. It happened to be the same day as the Rose Bowl for Ohio State and Notre Dame. Of course, where we live, everybody's Notre Dame fans. And I go to this 5K with running clothes on and just an Ohio State shirt on, and I happen to win this race. So it happened to be pretty cool. So this town has a lot of 5Ks. Well, they had a Halloween 5K. And I said to the boss, can I go run this race? And I'll just go right back to work. Sure, no problem. Just it'll be your lunch. So I go over to this 5K, and it's a Halloween 5K, and people wearing costumes and stuff. And I just get out of this mail truck with mail clothes on, change my shoes, and run this 5K. Well, I think I finished second or third. I don't know. I go back the next year, and I do the same thing. And then somebody says, this guy really takes this costume thing serious. He's even got a truck. Somebody said, no, he really works for the post office. He's just here to run this race. So it took me I think on the 5th year, I finally won this race. And that was like one of the coolest things. But I didn't stick around for any of the awards or nothing. I just got back in the vehicle, left. And mind you, I had already carried 2 loops of mail. I had already carried almost the whole street of mail. I just, would go over there 3 minutes, 5 minutes before the race, jump out, change my shoes, stand on the starting line. I wouldn't warm up or nothing. They'd say, go. And here I'd go, take off. And it was funny. So then it got to be, oh my God, is the mailman coming this year? Is the mailman coming this year? So it was pretty funny. But yeah, in that race day, I wound up with $100. So it's always fun when you get paid.
Like, you're my dad and I see you do all of these things, but like having these conversations, I get to hear more of like the why and the thought process underneath it. And some of the things that you don't see. You don't often see people putting the work in, you just see the result. So even you, as my dad, when you say that, we moved here, I started going to the Y. It was exactly a year when I got my time down. Nobody saw you and nobody knew that that was the goal. I mean, people saw you running every day, sure, that were around you, but like as your daughter, I just knew that you were running again. I didn't know, okay, I'm trying to get back down to see if I can even get back down to the pace that I was running before. And so you just kept showing up every day, showing up every day, showing up every day. And a year later, you finally were back there. And that is such an amazing theme. It's putting the work in when no one's watching. What are you doing? Who are you showing up as? Do you have a goal in mind? Do you have a purpose? And you did. It's just everybody sees that you show up to the race and you win. They didn't see the year that it took you to get back in the shape that you needed to be in. And everybody sees you as,
exactly.
Yeah, everybody sees you, the mailman, show up to the Halloween race year after year, but they don't know what's going on up here in your head. I got to win. I got to show up next year I didn't win this year. I've got to win next year. And it's this ongoing theme of having a goal and belief and the work ethic and the consistency that has allowed you to be successful. That partnered with your ability to always be curious and not be afraid of rejection. And I just feel like we can kind of start wrapping this up. I have a question about that. I feel like I've gotten that from you too in many, many ways. You don't seem like you've ever been afraid to just ask. Just walk into Airstream and ask. I didn't even know that story, but that all makes sense to me. Just walk in and ask, will you sponsor me? Do the leukemia thing, talk to the guy at Sprint openly. Like, these are all things that you have done as you were being the DJ on wheels. You were talking to people and just putting it out there. How do you get past this fear of people saying no or rejecting you or thinking, God, who does this guy think he is? Like, is that something that you battle at all? Because I do, and I know Greg does, this imposter syndrome or whatever it is. Many people feel that way. What do you do? Do you talk yourself out of it? Like, how do you get through that?
I think it's just my personality on things that I know that I can do. Okay. This is easy for me to do this, but it's got to be something that's easy for me.
Maybe not something that's easy for you, but something that you're confident about that you can do because you know that you've put the work in and you're enthusiastic about it and you're confident and you're passionate about it. You enjoy doing what you're doing. So it's easy for you to then ask.
Right.
Yeah. I just think that some of the stuff that you've been talking about today that I would never be able to make assumptions about. And Greg, you too, like you probably feel like you know my dad differently now because these are things that you don't talk about. You just see the result. And I just think it's pretty amazing.
Our yard didn't get like this. I had to put in the work. I studied it. I watched it. Hours and hours and hours of time on the internet watching, of course, nobody can see, but our whole backyard is artificial turf. And we have a putting green. Well, I come up with the idea I was going to, instead of mowing the grass and taking time to clean up around the pool all the time, let's just put in artificial turf. Well, basically, it's like laying carpet in your backyard. I had never done it.
Right.
I YouTubed it. I watched it. I studied it. And I put in the work. And we have one of the most fantastic backyards to sit in. I mean, all the time. It's a blast.
There it is. For those of you watching on YouTube, there's that beautiful putting green. Here's the thing. Everybody gets to come over and enjoy it. But like you said, hours of watching YouTube. I remember you'd be up in the middle of the night worried about it because it was snowing when you first started the project. And the dedication and the time that you and Susan both put into the labor of doing that and the trials, and something didn't go right. I got to figure out how to change that. That's all the work that's going on behind the scenes that nobody ever gets to see. They just enjoy the result. They see the trophy, they see the win. It just sounds like because you enjoy winning, because you enjoy being in charge, because you enjoy pushing and challenging yourself, that you
it's the
never going
challenge.
to end.
Not only that, it gives you a better appreciation.
Yeah.
Nobody's given it to me. Nobody just come and did it. I did it. It's an appreciation.
Yeah.
Even running, finishing a marathon, it's the appreciation. I did all the work.
Yeah.
And I'm going to appreciate it now.
It feels different. It feels different to play putt-putt on your putting green in your backyard, knowing that you put the hours and the time and the work in. You didn't just, show up one day and it was there, buy it that way. You didn't show up to the race and just win because you, on a whim.
Because I'm naturally fast. I had to work at it. You got to work at everything.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you're going to succeed. I don't know if I'm the best spokesperson for anything, but
you know what? It doesn't matter if you're the best spokesperson for anything or anyone, because you're living your life in a way that is fulfilling to you, doing the things that you love, finding challenges where you are interested, and it creates a fulfilling life. You're not being yanked around by everybody else's agenda. You're doing things within the parameters of, appreciating your wife and, the family time and prioritizing things properly, but you're not being yanked around by anybody else or anything else. You show up to everything with an enthusiasm and pride, and take on challenges that keep you young because you're constantly pushing yourself to learn something new, and not feeling defeated or like I could never do that, or I can never do that again, or I'm too old to do that. And all these excuses that we tell ourselves. You don't make excuses you never have. And
you just do it.
Yeah. I, as your daughter, I'm very grateful that I've had that example. And whether I recognized it to the depth and extent that I do now, all of those years, I know that it lives inside of me because through osmosis, through example, you've shown that leadership trait. And I feel that way about my own husband, to me, and then also to our kids, Greg. So on this special Father's Day edition, I just think it's really important to recognize that you guys are, as men, you're pulled in a lot of different directions as we talk about women and moms all the time. And that sometimes it feels like a thankless and underappreciated role to be a dad, to be the man of the household or whatever, but it isn't. It's all recognized. It's all appreciated. It's all, I witness greatness in both of you in ways that like I'm humbled by and I'm inspired by on a regular basis. And I don't always say it, and I should probably more often, but I think that's how a lot of wives and kids feel about their spouses and their dads, because you set the example, and I'm grateful to have both of you be the men that you are in my life. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Dad,
I'm glad that I've taught you something.
Yeah, a few things. Probably more than more that happens behind the scenes for me and makes me tick than you might ever give yourself credit for, because it's just you doing you. But the impact that it's had on me as in my decision making and in making choices in my adult life has been a lot of what would my dad do in this situation.
Right.
And I'm grateful to have had that example where it's a solid decision-making process.
Yes. And I'm grateful for you too, Tim. I feel very inspired by you and your story and where you come from and all the things that you've accomplished. And I've said it to you before, and just very grateful for being the father that you were to my wife, because she is an amazing human being, and she believes that amazing things can happen if you put in the work, and this is where this comes from, so thank you for kicking ass at being a dad at 20, at 20 years old, when you're just like, holy shit, I was just spit out of high school. I don't even know what I want to do with myself. And then all of a sudden now you're a dad, and how heavy that is. I mean, that was, I experienced that mid-20s, but at 20, I just can't even imagine the weight of that, and knowing how determined you were to be great at whatever it was, whether it was remodeling a house or doing your projects. I just know how your attention to detail and the level of like care and effort that you put into all the little things
Right. Right.
It's pretty badass. So
Well,
appreciate
thank you for that. Thank
It's
you
a
for that.
side of you, Dad, that we don't get to see often on this serious conversation because we're always having so much fun and everything is so goofy and, but these
Right.
conversations are just important to recognize because you have put in so much work and dedicated yourself to so many different things that you have become great at because you're a champion mindset and you've always been a champion mindset. And it didn't matter how big or little the job was. It's a champion mindset that gets it done and gets it done right and gets it done taking care of everybody along the way.
Right.
And I know it's the old quote, winners never quit.
Winners never win and winners never quit winning.
Perfect. It's a statement that we should all live by and have running through our minds on a daily basis. Don't ever give up. Don't ever throw in the towel. Keep showing up. You can't stop winning if you keep giving it your effort.
There you go. Well said.
So,
thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for sharing a side of you with us that is beyond the surface. And what's next and where can we find more information about Mortdog?
Well, Mortdog, you have to go onto the Instagram and it's DIY with Mortdog. I'm not a professional. Most of that's just for your entertainment. So you can go there and I'm not sure what's next. Yeah. So we'll just have to keep posted there.
You just keep us guessing. Keep us guessing on that. Well, I appreciate you, Dad. Thanks for doing this. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for having me. It was fun. It's fun talking to you.
All right.